Hello friends, it's Indiana Homes, and today I have a special treat for you, a hidden historic treasure, the Rancho Los Alamitos, dating back to 1784 right here in Southern California. Yes, right here in Southern California. The original Spanish land grant started out in a partition of land by the Mexican government in 1784. This hidden treasure is now a publicly owned and operated entity, but here at the ranch, it still seems like it's 1834. So come along and let's see what we can find and learn today.
In the heart of Long Beach, California, stands an almost secret but beautiful treasure. It's the Rancho Los Alamitos, which dates back to before the 1780s. The rancho takes its name from the 1834 Mexican partition of the 1784 Los Nietos, a Spanish concession covering an area in present-day California's southwestern Los Angeles County and northwestern Orange County. Los Alamitos means little cottonwoods of poplars in Spanish, after the native Fremont cotton trees there. Rancho Los Alamitos originally included much of the area of present-day eastern Long Beach, all of Los Alamitos and Rossmore, and most of Seal Beach, Cypress, Stanton, and Garden Grove. It's also sometimes referred to as Bixby Ranch, after its last private owners. The early 19th century adobe ranch house still stands today, housing a museum which presents the history of the area. The history of the 28,000-acre Rancho Los Alamitos is almost a microcosm for the history of expansion throughout Southern California, from the Native Americana cultures to contemporary times. The area was the first location of the major circa 500 CE, 1780s Tongva and Gabrielina sacred ceremonies, sacred ceremonial and trading village, Pavunga, now an archaeological site. After the Spanish occupation, the ownership was changed and the boundaries would shrink many times. Situated in the floodplain between the mouths of the ever-changing and ever-shifting Los Angeles, San Gabriel, and Santa Ana rivers, the coastal plain terrain and the rancho is virtually flat, rich soil and was subject to frequent flooding. The rancho building itself is located near the Pavunga Springs alongside one of the few small hills, Alamitos Mesa, in the area. Rancho Alamitos was one of 5 ranchos that resulted from the partition of the original Rancho Los Nietos grant given to Manuel Nieto, a former sergeant in the Spanish Army in 1784 by Governor Pedro Fages, coincidentally his former commander. Nieto's grant was not only one of the first 3 awarded by the Spanish in Alta California, it was also the largest. After Nieto died, his children requested his original grant be partitioned. In 1834, Mexican Governor Jose Figueroa officially declared Rancho Los Alamitos as one of 5 partitions. In 1844, the rancho was purchased by Abel Stearns, a Massachusetts native who typified many of the Yankees who settled in California and merged with the ruling Mexican Californios population. Stearns, who married Arcadia Bandini, the daughter of the early Spanish regional civic and business leader Juan Bandini, became one of the leading merchants and major rancho owners in Mexican Alta California. The rancho was on the periphery of the battles that settled the California campaign of the Mexican-American War by 1846. During the California Gold Rush, the rancho supplied much of the beef that would be herded north to feed the growing number of immigrants who were flocking to the gold fields of Northern California from 1848 on. After California became a U.S. state in 1850, Rancho Los Alamitos was the headquarters of one of the largest cattle ranches then in existence in the United States. Through shrewd business dealings, Stearns assumed control of Los Alamitos and many other surrounding ranchos. With the secession of California to the United States following the Mexican-American War, the 1848 Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo provided that the land grants would be honored. As required by the Land Grant of 1851, a claim for Rancho Los Alamitos was filed with the Public Land Commission in 1852. The grant was patented in Abel Stearns in August 29th of 1874. As required by the Land Act of 1851, a claim for Rancho Los Alamitos was filed with the Public Land Commission in 1852, and the grant was patented to Abel Stearns on August 29, 1874, for 28,027.17 acres. After a disastrous drought in the 1860s, Stearns lost control of the ranch, which then sublet to a number of farmers until the 1880s, when John William Bixby, a cousin of Jotham Bixby and Llewellyn Bixby, who controlled the adjacent Rancho Los Cerritos, bought the rancho along with a group which included his cousins Isaiah Hellman and the founder of the Farmers and Merchants Bank of Los Angeles. Trying to capitalize on the 1880s Southern California land boom, John Bixby developed the town site of Alamitos Beach, which would eventually be assumed by Long Beach. Before Bixby could do much, he died suddenly in 1888, apparently due to appendicitis attack, and Rancho Los Alamitos was separated between three major parties. The developed Alamitos Beach properties were shared equally, while John Bixby's heirs kept the central section of the remaining rancho, and the Bixby cousins from Rancho Los Cerritos assumed control of the northern section, and Hellman took control of the southern lands around present-day Seal Beach. Unfortunately, a financial crisis prevented the various parties from seriously pursuing John Bixby's dream of developing Alamitos Beach. The Bixbys once flirted with sugar beet production on the properties they held in Northern California. In the 1890s, Jotham Bixby arranged to provide the land on the rancho for sugar beet production and recruited the capital of William Clark, who was amongst the richest men in the United States, to build a sugar beet refinery plant on a portion of the Bixby Ranch property. Later oil discoveries from the Long Beach oil field continued to fund the rancho. The historic ranch surrounding the ranching facilities, with some open landscape of Rancho Los Alamitos, can still be found adjacent to Cal State Long Beach. The Bixby family descendants donated the property to the city of Long Beach in 1967. The 19th century adobe ranch house still stands today, surrounded by its historic gardens designed by Frederick Law Olmsted Jr. and Florence Yauch and Lucille Council, all of which are on the National Register of Historic Places. The Rancho Los Alamitos house and grounds are a museum which present the history of the rancho era and country house grand era and the region.
The rancho was originally part of a 28,000-acre land grant and comprised much of what is now Long Beach, California. However, today it is far from 28,000 acres. It's much smaller, but it still is comprised of the original home here. The adobe, the original rancho adobe, is encased in this more modern-looking home. However, if you're to take a tour, you can inspect the original adobe encased within this wooden structure. In addition to the adobe, the house, there are many gardens. This was a private home, of course, at one time. And as such, there were some modern amenities and some recreational opportunities that were installed or built. For example, here we're surveying a very large regulation size tennis court. Of course, this tennis court's no longer in use, as this is now a historic park. But it's interesting, they kept the tennis court so you could see that it still exists. Just off the tennis court is a wonderful garden. I always feel like I'm Alice in Wonderland when I come here into this garden, because the garden is just amazing. It has all these giant succulents that have been here probably for a couple of hundred years. And they are extremely large, making a normal-sized human feel like they have been miniaturized. It almost feels like you're going back into the time of the dinosaurs. As we walk through here, you'll see how these succulents and other plants and trees just tower over me. I'm walking around the other side of the tennis court now, and this is a nice shaded area with trees and an arbor. You can only imagine how this must have been for the residents that lived here when they owned the home and lived and worked in this home. This must have been a beautiful and relaxing place to rest and enjoy the beauty, the natural beauty, and enjoy the natural beauty found here at Rancho Los Alamitos. Again, look at these giant trees here. This big gnarly tree is amazing. Just spectacular. The Rancho Los Alamitos sits on top of a hill, one of the highest points in all of Long Beach. Now, probably beginning in the 1960s, the land started to be sold off and divided up. A large portion of the land was donated by the owners to the state of California with the express purpose of building a university. So the Cal State University of Long Beach is built on a portion of the land that was originally part of the Spanish land grant of Rancho Los Alamitos. Now we're walking back into this garden. On the campus of Cal State Long Beach is a Native American burial ground that still exists today. It's a sacred ground that is on the campus of Cal State Long Beach and is not supposed to be touched, altered, or in any way changed, as we have many Native Americans who are buried in this land. Down below the rancho, in the area also where Cal State Long Beach is where the ranch hands worked. The ranch hands lived and worked down in the lower part, the flat part of the rancho. Walking through this part of the garden, you see a very restful, peaceful, tranquil stream that runs through this part of the property. It's just beautiful. And there's a little pond here as well, very small little pond. And then going further up, you have more water features here, another little waterfall of this water coming out of a spring. You can see the stream continues on down through the natural landscape. It's not easy to find areas in California that have natural beauty dating back to the 1700s in an untouched or at least preserved manner like this. Where you find this kind of landscape, these kinds of natural plants that belong here in the land that are native, is usually in a state or national park where the plants and the flora and fauna have been meticulously cared for, planned for, and preserved. But here we have an actual rancho, an adobe rancho that was part of the Spanish land grant, where we still have indigenous plants that were here hundreds of years ago, preserved and cared for by the Rancho Los Alamitos Foundation. As I walk through this beautiful garden of indigenous plants, we have a stream that continues to run through most of the property down here in the garden, providing some irrigation and a very cool, tranquil feeling. If we look beyond here, you can even see that we have some non-native plants to the area. We have a windbreak tree line of bamboo, which must have been imported and brought in and planted some time back. It creates a windbreak, privacy, and sunshade. It should be noted that the property is now in the middle of a neighborhood. Whenever I come to the Rancho Los Alamitos property, I feel like I'm transported to a different time and a different place. It certainly doesn't feel like the 21st century in the United States. It feels like another time and another place, an ancient time, a place far away in a faraway time. If you want to get away from the hustle and bustle, the noise of the city, there's no better place than Rancho Los Alamitos. The walk I'm on has several different elevations, several different landscaping features, and many places to sit and rest and relax, like this bench here. If you see where I'm panning to right now, you can see there's a wall with some barbed wire and a house just beyond that. That's part of the modern or more recent construction that was probably done in the 1970s. So you can see that the housing developments that have grown up around the rancho are quite close, just outside the walls of the rancho. Look at the size of these plants. It is just amazing. Let's give you an idea for scale. I'm going to turn around here so you can see the size of this plant behind me. You see how large this is? This thing is huge. I don't know how old it is, but it's got to be over 100 years old, maybe 200 years old. If you're a lover of beautiful and unique gardens, you cannot go wrong here. This is a sheer pleasure, a joy to experience. Now, as I turn right, just past the tennis court, we come into another more formal garden. You can see this is not like the garden of Native American plants that we just came from, where we saw the succulents. This is a much more formal, planned garden. In fact, there's even a statue right here, if we look. And a little fountain. And just off the garden is the south entrance to the tennis court. And you see you can go right from the tennis court into this garden, right from the garden into the tennis court. It's so lovely and peaceful here. Most people do not know about this. I mean, very few people ever know that this is here. You could live in California your entire life and never know that this beautiful and historic treasure is here. A beautifully preserved remnant of the Spanish colonialism that is part of the early history of California. Going through this gateway here, we can see another garden, much smaller. This garden feels like it was built for reflection, for rest, contemplation, maybe even prayer. Although we have an airplane flying overhead from the nearby Long Beach Airport, it still feels very tranquil here. We hear the rustling of the trees and the bushes all around this very intimate garden. And at the front of the garden, we have a fountain. It's currently not operational, but you can see this was a major feature. It was a big water feature in this garden at one time. Beautiful flowers here. Beautiful steps. The sounds you hear within the rancho property are the sounds of an ancient time. Sounds of a time gone by. This is one elevation above another walkway and another planted area of the property lined with trees. Looking from this sand pathway, we're one elevation below the main rancho house and one elevation above a brick walkway with trees lining the walkway. That's one of the beautiful things about this property, is it's not all one level. It's at the top of a hill, one of the highest points in Long Beach, and they made use of the hill by creating different elevations. We see some artwork here. This is a beautiful area right here. You can see the cement and clay floor, some rattan straw chairs and a table, and a beautiful ceramic of Mary and Jesus. I imagine Catholicism was widely practiced at this time when this was built, inasmuch as this was originally a Spanish land grant. Now you can start to see some more of the elevations that are present here. I'm one level down from the main house. Now I'm on a second level, and I'm coming down into a third level of elevation. And again, gardens everywhere. A rose garden to my right over here with a brick pathway. It is just spectacular here. I'm 3 levels down from the main house, and you can see we have a brick walkway here with ivy and these beautiful, tall, elegant trees lining the brick walkway, creating a very pleasant and very serene environment. Today, these days we talk about getting your steps in, walking, getting some exercise, because everybody's so tied down to their desks and their jobs. Well, back in the day, when the rancho was a working ranch, I'm sure everybody was doing a lot of physical labor. And even if you weren't one of the ranch hands or one of the farm hands, you were, in fact, maybe one of the owners or a family of the owners, you would still be doing a lot of walking around the property. Remember, initially there were no cars. Everything was just riding horses and riding on wagons. Now this is looking into that other garden where we saw the fountain, the non-functional fountain, that sort of private garden. That's interesting that that is separated from this. We can walk over to it from here through these hedges, and there's a wonderful little gate right here that allows you entry into this. All of these different elevations are accessible to each other through a series of gates and walkways. Now we're looking down into that garden we were just in a few minutes ago. We can see how small and private that is. And we just came from this elegant walk with these tall trees down this way. Look how lovely that is. Not too many people have the kind of money to build and maintain a property like this anymore. This is something else. I'm going to walk back down the brick pathway with these elegant trees because there is one more elevation down and one more little patio for us to look at. What a gift it was to live in a place like this. And what a responsibility to take care of all this land, all the animals that went with it, and all of the workers that had to be fed, housed, and paid. So now we're going to turn left just before we get to the rose garden here, looking down at this 180-degree half-circle patio, which was probably a favorite place of the rancho owners to sit and have their morning coffee or their afternoon tea or beer or maybe a tequila. This is the view from inside the rose garden as we look towards the tree-lined brick path. This very formal side garden over here has a lot of European feel to it. It has that influence of Europe. Now, of course, this has been updated and maintained with various materials over the decades, over the couple of 100 years, really. So we see a progression of different styles of masonry and building construction. I'm sure the use of these steel handrails was something that was not common at the time. One thing that would have shocked the original residents are the airplanes flying overhead now. The rancho is in the flight path of the local Long Beach International Airport. So we do have airplanes and jets flying by. Here's the screened porch we're walking in front of right now. You can see inside. They have this beautiful screened porch to keep the insects away from them when they were resting. It's amazingly cool up here. This is a very warm September day, but here at the rancho, with all the tree cover and with the breezes that blow across the top of this hill, it feels cool. One of the things the rancho is known for, if you go on a tour, is their amazing glass collection. They don't allow you to photograph or video inside the rancho, not inside the home itself. But if you do, you'll see many beautiful historic pieces of glass in their very special glass collection. Here in this exterior window, you see a little bit of the glass from their collection. So this gives you an idea of exactly how much glass they might have. They have a lot. The lady of the house was an avid glass collector. Looking from the north side of the house out towards the front lawn, you get another idea of the scale of these gigantic trees. Just how big they are. Now on the north side of the house over here, we have their chimney for the house. And 3 steps up, you could sit at this little settee here, this little love seat, and look down on this concrete patio, which must have been for entertaining. And then walking north from the house across this big elliptical patio, we have some hedges with some beautiful, huge trees and a wonderful pond in a fountain. Not really a pond, it's a fountain that seems like a pond. And if we look south, or if we look east from this fountain, you'll see this giant tree. The scale of this tree is phenomenal. Just look at this. This is a very large tree. The scale of this tree and the age of this tree must be really something. Walking around here, you can see there's more concrete pathways that take you to other parts. This area is planted with some bamboo for shade and some more kind of tropical-like palms, creating a completely different feel. We even have some birds of paradise over here. I don't know if you can see that. This is a completely different feeling than from what we have in the succulent garden, where we have the native plants that are native to California. Walking up another hedge path, we have a beautiful covered patio used for entertaining. Now, from what I understand, you are allowed to apply to rent out this part of the patio, this part of the rancho. You are allowed to apply to rent out this part of the rancho. I imagine people rent it out for weddings, anniversaries, things like that. It's so lovely and peaceful here. And then there's another side patio over here. So everywhere you go, we have walkways, gardens, patios designed for rest, relaxation, reflection, to set you at ease. You can imagine how hard that the workers that worked in the house, the field hands, the ranchers, the ranch hands, and of course even the owners worked at maintaining this property, at earning enough money to keep the property and to keep it in the condition that we have it in. So having a place to rest and relax, to take the weight off of one's shoulders from all the responsibility of keeping and maintaining this beautiful property must have been very important. Now we're going to walk back up that same way. And you can see this beautiful tree here up ahead. So many of these trees are so large, so big, so incredible. It's nice to just be quiet and just listen to the wind in the trees. Unfortunately, we do have airplanes that fly overhead because of the Long Beach International Airport's flight path being almost directly overhead from the rancho. What a beautiful property this is. I think everybody should have an opportunity to experience this. It's free, it doesn't cost anything to park, it doesn't cost anything to tour the property. There might be a cost to going on the tour. I'll have to check. I feel like there wasn't the last time I was on it. We're walking past a screened-in porch. Now we're walking along the south side of the main house, and along the back of the house, which is where tours enter. Here's a little courtyard behind the main house, and on to the left over here is the part of the house. It's connected, but it's a separate part of the house where the ranch hands lived. So the ranch hands lived here on the left, and the owners lived here inside. It's not a very big area. Not at all. But it's tranquil. You get the idea that this would have been relaxing for the ranchers. There's a pretty little area here. Here's another pretty little patio off the back of the house. Over in this part of the property, we have an old chuck wagon. Let's take a look at this old chuck wagon here. This is how they would feed the ranch hands and the farm hands out in the fields. I actually have an old wood burning stove, a Ranger. An old wood burning stove, some cabinetry, some running water, storage for wood right here. That's where they stored the wood. You can see the wood in there. It would feed this old fire, this old wood burning stove, a sink, some very basic cabinetry. Looks like a little office back there for the cook, maybe. An office for the cook. Place for them to rest. An old desert water bag. Ames Harris Nelville. Ceramic and metal. Look at this table here. This table here was a fold-up table, so when the wagon was traveling, the table wouldn't be bouncing up and down. It would fold up against the wall. This is pretty cool. This is a real lunch wagon. See if I can get another view of it here. Of course, they built some metal steps and railing here, but you get an idea when you see it here. You can see the wagon wheels underneath. Of course, it looks like the wagon wheels are not in their original condition. They don't have anything on them. It's just the rims. But you can see how this chuck wagon here served the ranch hands and the farm hands back in the day, because they were working out in the fields, tending to the animals and the crops, and somehow they had to get fed. This is how, right here. They got fed with this. They got fed, the ranch hands got fed from this chuck wagon right here. We have a little chicken coop over here. See some chickens happily living here. This is where the owners of the adobe would keep their chickens and collect their eggs and be able to have fresh eggs every day from their chickens. I imagine they had a lot more chickens back in the day than they do now. Here's another barn. You can see there's a lot of hay storage up here in this barn. And as we walk in here, you can see this was the dairy barn. This was the barn for the dairy cows. You can see the steel dairy cans over there to collect the milk to make dairy products like milk and cheese, and then these big wooden bars here with steel and chain was what the farm used here, what the rancho used to secure the cows' heads so they wouldn't start moving around. They'd be just controlled right there. And then they have hay right here in the front, these troughs for feeding them hay. And then in the middle there, they've got some slanted wood that comes down. I imagine this was to wash things out. That was probably the washout right there. That slanted piece of recessed wood there was likely for the ranchers to have the ability to wash out this area and have sort of a drain, because, you know, cows have to use the bathroom like the rest of us, and they just do it where they're standing. So this would have been their dairy barn. It looks like they could have 6 cows in here at any given time, and they'd be collecting their milk to make their milk and cheese. And then above us was where they kept their big storage of hay. So this was a real and serious working ranch. This is a big wagon here, probably for carrying hay and maybe some of the crops that they would harvest from here on the ranch. On the property, you can see some real primitive springs up there on the top, and not much in the way of springs on the bottom. It would have been a real hard ride. Oh yeah, it would have. This is a very basic, very primitive kind of wagon. This would have been a hard life on your back, that's for sure. Now over in this other pen over here, we don't have chickens, but we have is ducks. Over here they had ducks, and they have a little duck pond. So, not sure why they would have been raising ducks other than for food. So maybe they had a duck colony that they could maintain and then have some nice, nutritious, yummy tasting duck soup and duck meat. Further off, it looks like we have another chicken coop beyond the duck pond, fenced off, where it looks like there's a rooster or 2 back in there. Pretty interesting. Here's a relic of an old piece of farm equipment. Looks like it might have been part of some type of a grain grinding machine at one time. Now we're walking back over here towards the corrals. There's a goat there. There's a young foal and a couple of big full-grown horses. Look at these beauties. And over here at the corner of the property, they do have a gift shop. Like all good historic properties, like all good historic places of interest, this rancho has a gift shop. The Rancho Gift Shop. Oh, it looks like they've got all their Halloween. Looks like they've got all their Halloween products out. Hi, how are you? Good. This is cute. You sure are. Wow. Gotta bring my daughters up here.
This has been Indiana Homes. I hope you've enjoyed this visit to one of California's oldest and most historical properties. I hope you look forward to my future videos. Please hit the like button, subscribe, and hit the notifications button. Thank you very much.